and welcome to the Thursday Total Soccer Show M-Emergency Edition. I am Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who, unfortunately, I can't suspend for 6 months or terminate his contract. It's Taylor Rockwell.
Unfortunately, really? I mean, first of all, hello, but second of all, unfortunately?
Well, it would save us some money. For the quality of the show would go
When you
down.
say us, you mean you, specifically. Yeah. Gotcha.
So we were going to talk about US men's national team players
Yep.
in the Bundesliga on the Thursday show. But then US Soccer dropped a bomb out of nowhere, right? No one saw this coming. At least no one in the media saw this coming. Hope Solo suspended for 6 months. Contract for 2016 terminated by US Soccer.
Right.
So now we got to talk about it.
So my initial reaction was that, like, wow, that's not a big deal. Like,
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
That's interesting. Why did you have that? My initial reaction was, wow, I didn't see that coming, and wow, this is much harsher than I expected.
I guess because I'm not surprised that there was some sort of disciplinary action against her, not just because she said Sweden were cowards.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's the official mostly reason,
Yeah.
right? It's for her comments after the Sweden game where she said Sweden were cowards and they wouldn't go far.
But it's the Sweden stuff, it's the Zika stuff, it's going back years, and that's what Suno Galate's statement said. The U.S. Soccer statement said was basically it's an accumulation of transgressions, right?
Yeah, so I've got the full quote in front of me. It's the US Soccer statement, right? So in the first paragraph, they say the reason for the 6 month suspension and the termination of contract are the comments by Hope Solo after the match against Sweden. You know, they're unacceptable. They don't meet the standards that they expect of US soccer players. Second paragraph, taking into consideration the past incidents involving Hope, as well as the private conversations we've had requiring her to conduct herself in a manner befitting a US national team member. US Soccer decides this is the appropriate disciplinary action. So it is the Sweden comments, but it's also an accumulation of everything that's happened since, I want to say, 2007 at the earliest.
Right.
At the latest.
Yeah. and so to go back to my initial response, though, it was just sort of like, shocking that you guys wait for the two major tournaments in the last 2 years to be done with, and then you suspend it for 6 months when there's no huge tournament coming up.
Right.
So it felt a little more like that. Then I got, for a moment, I was like, oh, but they've canceled her contract. That's a big deal. That means she's can't be playing for the U.S. team, not realizing that it's a year-to-year contract.
Right.
So again, it's mostly just she's not going to play in 2016. Again.
Yeah, and to put that in perspective, right, there are, 4 months left, more or less, in 2016. As per the CBA that US Soccer has with the players, she's getting severance of 3 months, right? So she's going to see most of the money she would have got from that US Soccer contract. The suspension is really just 2 games in September. US plays Thailand and the Netherlands. Not really high-profile games. They probably were intended as show-off our gold medal games.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So she'll miss those 2 games, and then she'll be officially suspended until February 2017. She will be able to keep playing for Seattle Reign in NWSL, and she will continue to be paid by US Soccer for that. Do you know about this weird contract thing that they have?
I mean, no, just the basics. Clearly not as much as you do, my friend.
Okay, well, I'll explain it for you and for our listeners. So the US national team players in the NWSL, as well as I think some Canadian national team players and Mexican national team players, their salaries, their NWSL salaries, are paid for by the national organisation. So US Soccer pays Hope Solo's Seattle Reign salary. This was a setup so that Seattle Reign don't have to spend money out of their pocket to have this big name player, so that someone like Hope Solo, all the other big names that Alex Morgan, etc., can be paid well, not count against the team cap, and it raises the level of NWSL because they can spend their money elsewhere. That's unaffected, so she will still be paid until the end of the year. Second thing, Hope Solo already fairly wealthy, as I understand it, through endorsements.
Yeah,
so I think
the
thing I want to say is financially, not really the hit that it originally seems when you think about it.
I mean, it never really occurred to me as being a financial hit because I do think she has so many different sponsorships and endorsement deals, just even from actually being in advertisements to sponsored tweets that probably pay her a decent chunk of change.
Yeah.
So I think she's doing just fine. She has her her documentary series that she's doing with different U.S. women's national team players.
Does she? Is that still happening?
Megan Rapinoe promoted one yesterday, so yeah, I think so. Who's to say for sure? But yeah, so again, it wasn't even about the financial thing. For me, it was more about it does seem like it's been kind of a long time coming, that there have been a lot of little incidents here and there, some bigger than others, and maybe we'll get into those in a minute. But I think for me, it was sort of to say, coming on the heels of the cowards comment, it seems harsh.
Yeah.
Coming on the heels of all of the other stuff, it seems light to me. And it seems sort of self-serving from U.S. Soccer, basically.
Yeah, so my take on this is, now I've thought about it, I think it is the time maybe to essentially stop selecting Hope Solo for the US women's national team, right? Because her behaviour kind of reflects poorly on the team, right? Even the Sweden thing, but all the other things going back, which maybe we'll list at some point. But,
I think we probably should now, because we keep making vague references to things, and it probably makes sense to kind of go through them all.
And before we do the list, I would say this comment calling the Sweden's tactics cowardly, I would say is the least of all her transgressions that have attracted media attention.
I'll put it this way: when she said that, I just rolled my eyes. Like it was sort of like, okay, this is sort of par for the course of saying stuff, putting your foot in your mouth a little bit.
Let's do this then. Let's take it in turns of listing Hope Solo ill-advised, Trump-esque almost comments.
Oh, so you want to go comments? Okay.
Or transgressions. I'm going to start us in 2007.
Okay.
Back to the summer of 2007.
Sure.
The Women's World Cup. Hope Solo was the starting keeper in the tournament. She's replaced in the semi-final, I believe, by Brianna Scurry. US loses 4-0. And she essentially comes out and says, I would have saved those. It was the wrong decision. It's not... 2000, when was it? 2004. It's not 2004 anymore when Brianna Scurry was good, essentially. That is a terrible thing to say. That's also, weirdly, that's when Hope Solo came into to public's attention.
Yeah.
Do you think most people heard of Hope Solo after those comments? So she almost entered the public consciousness the same way she's about to leave it, I believe. All right, so there's incident number one.
Sure, I'd say... not in chronological order, but another major incident. Incident number 2 would be her Twitter rivalry with Brandi Chastain, where she kind of went on a Twitter rant about Brandi Chastain as a commentator.
Yeah.
And I know that Hope Solo, I guess, did get some backing from her teammates and get some support, but it's still another public feud with a public face of U.S. soccer. And for not, like, the strongest of reasons, I would argue.
Was it about just she didn't enjoy some of the criticism in the commentary?
Yeah.
And I remember her saying something like, I feel sorry for the fans that have to press mute. Yeah. And that shows a lack of respect for, like, the generation that went previous and laid the foundations for you to be able to play professional soccer.
Right. Number 3 goes back to you.
Number 3, let's choose one. In 2015, I believe, Hope Solo was suspended for 30 days because her husband, Jeremy Stevens, is that name? Apparently, I don't know if this is definite or not, borrowed the team bus, drove it drunk with Hope Solo, also apparently intoxicated, alongside him. Massively disrespectful to the team. Suspended for 30 days, like 6 months before the World Cup started.
Yeah. And then, obviously, one of the biggest ones is the domestic violence situation. Where
this was one I was forgetting.
Yeah, it's kind of a big one. Where and it's weird because I've seen it erroneously reported that she got into a fight with her husband, and maybe that's been a thing, but the major issue, the one that required police and arrests and trials.
Court cases.
Yeah.
Still not finished either.
No. Was, I guess, assaulting her sister and nephew at their house. And if you read the full account of that one, it's definitely pretty freaky. She's got a little Terminator to her at times, and I'll spare the listeners by saying, like, I'm not going to go into like and then this happened and this happened, but basically it was almost a closed case, and then I think it was the judge. I can't remember the process exactly, but it was basically like, no, we're taking this to trial. Like, there's enough evidence here that something weird happened, and it's still kind of yet to be determined at this point.
But there's definitely enough to say that I can understand US soccer's perspective.
Are we done? Because I got more.
Oh, do you really?
I mean, there's the whole Zika controversy this summer where she kind of goes on record talking about how she's very concerned about it, then kind of makes light of it by posting these comments on Twitter and posting the photo of her with all of her bug spray.
Just jabbing Brazilian fans a little bit, right?
Which I think she tried to, like, I think cover up and be like, oh, no, but I really do use that stuff. But also it was a joke. And it's one of those, like, when... It felt this is a personal thing for me, but when you're talking to somebody and they're sort of like, oh, no, I meant it as a joke, but I mean there was this too. It's like, well, no, you can't have both. You can't say it was a joke, but also I really do use this stuff and I'm very concerned about it. So it just felt a little bit like, again, kind of a disingenuous approach that maybe she could have handled better.
So I want to get back to the idea of, was it correct for US soccer to do this, right? And if you accept that it's not just a Sweden comment, which it's not, right? That's basically what Galati says. Do you accept that it's her behaviour over the past 10 years or so? Is it okay to dole out this treatment to her given her past behaviour? And a reminder, she's suspended from the US national team until February 2017, and she's had her contract terminated, which, even though it's not a financial hit, it's a very public shaming. And I think that's almost the key part, is to treat this athlete who has won the World Cup, won the Olympics with you, World Cup runner-up in 2011, to treat her really poorly in public, to make an example of her and almost wash your hands of her and say, you're not good enough. You're not a good enough person for our team, right? That's harsh.
It's very harsh if that's what they're doing. If they're saying, look, we expect you to hold yourself to this standard. You are a professional soccer player representing the U.S. women's national team, which has this proud history. You're not living up to that history, so you're being suspended. And, maybe they've told her that maybe Jill Ellis has told her they have plans to move on without her. The other element that you probably have to talk about at this point is the fact that Hope Solo is a very public face for the campaign for equality in both NWSL and in U.S. soccer, for equal pay, for equal facilities, and so there is some speculation that maybe this is also tied in with that.
Is this a Taylor Rockwell conspiracy theory moment?
Well, no, but I think, frankly, I'm not a huge fan of Hope Solo. I'm not the biggest fan of hers, but I think there is definitely an argument to be made that this timing does seem convenient, that it's after a major tournament, but it's after a prolonged bout of going back and forth with the federation, where any interview you see about U.S. women's soccer and pay and salaries and equality, she's in there.
But isn't that just because she is a very famous player, right? I mean, right. The same stuff like Alex Morgan and Carly Lloyd are in there too, right? Because they're the public faces of it. So I don't think it's because of that, because otherwise U.S. soccer would be somehow taking action against Carly Lloyd and Alex Morgan.
That's fair. But maybe this is a little bit of a conspiracy then. But if everything we're talking about, if all of the allegations and past behavioral incidents, they point to a person who maybe doesn't think her actions all the way through and has a tendency to say stuff and put her foot in her mouth, maybe that's not the person that's the best person to have at the negotiating table. And so if you have an opportunity to be like, look, there's all this other stuff and you're not helping, we're going to suspend you, and then you're not going to be involved in these negotiations as an added perk,
so
maybe?
Are you flipping this the other way, where maybe the equal pay for equal play campaign is stronger without Hope Solo?
I think it's possible.
Because you don't have someone damaging your brand?
Yeah, I think it's possible. But I mean, I think it's also one less... It goes back and forth, because it's definitely a one less person who maybe is going to be not as aggressive, but then you can make the argument that you need that aggressive person at the negotiating table arguing on your behalf. And so I think you could take it either way. I'm just pointing out that I think it's worth noting that in listing all of the things that have happened with Hope Solo, she is this very public face of this movement. And so you have to kind of bring that up at that point to wonder if U.S. soccer also has ulterior motives.
Well, speaking of U.S. soccer's ulterior motives, here's a big thing I want to get to. If her behaviour has been so bad that they say it deems this suspension and this termination of contract and this public shaming, how do we feel about the fact that they felt the behaviour was okay when they needed her to win a World Cup and when they needed her for a shot at Olympic gold in Rio? This is the part that sits really uncomfortably with me. If something's unacceptable, then it's unacceptable and you can't be on the team. It can't be unacceptable if we win gold. Or can it? Is there an argument for competitiveness and maximising the talent you've got, right? This is the debate I want to have with you.
I think that, yes, some federations would justify it as look, we've got to employ this relatively unsavory character because we want to win, because he or she helps the team. But you can't then suspend that player after the fact. That's the kind of difference for me, is if you're going to keep this player on the team, then you keep that player in the team. You don't keep them in the team for the tournament and then be like, but now we've decided that it's not okay. That's pretty clearly just shaping your policy based on performance.
Yeah, and then there's 3 years to the next World Cup, so now it's okay to do it. I think that's the thinking at US Soccer, right? The braver thing to do would have been 2015, when she's been alongside her husband, who's driving the team bus drunk, it seems. And there's the court case about her punching her nephew, and there's domestic violence there. If that's unacceptable, the brave thing would have been to drop her from the team, just stop selecting her at that point, and give, Ashlyn Harris or Alyssa Nair the chance to be the goalkeeper at the 2015 Women's World Cup. Right. Because there is also this tiny taint of the Women's World Cup win in 2015 is slightly tarnished by the fact that US Soccer overlooked what Hope Solo was doing.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's it kind of reminds me of when you have, not that this ever happened to me, but if you have this big family vacation planned on the weekend, and then the kid gets into trouble on Tuesday. The parents are like, well, you're grounded until 5 minutes before we leave for that family vacation.
Because we've seen Home Alone and we don't want that to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's set a burglar's head on fire.
It's sort of you're not really laying down the law there. If your true intent is to rectify behavior and say we don't stand for this, then being like you're suspended right up until the next tournament that we might need you for.
And I think that 30-day suspension in 2015, I think that's what that was about. I think Jill Ellis and US Soccer Federation were like, how about we try and teach her a lesson and we'll do just enough punishment to get her focused for the World Cup, but we still need her because, remember, US Soccer was desperate to win that World Cup, as US fans were, because hadn't won it since 99, came so close in 2011, and you do have, I think, a better chance of winning it with Hope Solo in goal. So to play sort of win at all costs advocate, I feel like Albert would be on this page, our co-host Albert, that basically you do everything you can to win that tournament, even if it means sort of putting up with some of Hope Solo's behaviour.
And this is probably a double standard for me, and if so, then I apologize. But I would say with the U.S. women, I'm less okay with that than probably with the U.S. men.
Why is that?
Because
they have more talent?
Because they're better. Yeah.
Right.
Because there's an idea that like you're talking about like scrapping and winning and fighting to get this, this third World Cup medal. It's the third title. Like at that point it becomes sort of like if you want to win, like you do kind of want them to win the right way.
Yeah.
Whereas with the U.S. men or with like underdogs or teams that are really struggling, I feel like it becomes more of like scrappy, like maybe Jermaine Jones, that appeal goes through. Maybe that's okay.
The U.S. men in '98, Steve Sampson dropped John Harkes from the team because
that's a very good point.
Right, he had been sleeping with Eric Ronaldo's wife, and like if that, I don't know, like is it.
And kept it secret, which is another fascinating point.
It's kind of to Steve Sampson's credit that he didn't release that to the public and kind of just took the blame completely.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's more to that story. There's the fact that he kind of changed his tactics and got more defensive when he got to the World Cup. But what I'm saying is...
listen to the Mutant Gene podcast with Alexi Lawless. Yes. That interview was pretty interesting.
It was, yeah. But if you think about that, the US, only really had a fighting chance of doing okay at that World Cup if they operated at, maximum talent capacity. And then kind of shot themselves in the foot by doing what I would say is the honourable thing and removing John Harkes from the team.
Yeah.
Right? The US Soccer in 2015 did the opposite thing, kept Hope Solo on the team, and won the World Cup.
Well, but we just said that was Steve Sampson, right? So, I mean, that was Steve Sampson who made that decision, not US Soccer.
Well, I don't know who made the decisions there. I imagine Steve Sampson with the approval of US Soccer.
That makes sense, yeah. But I think that maybe that's the difference, is that it was also not Jill Ellis. And it also makes me wonder, how much power Jill Ellis has to really dictate who's in the squad and who isn't, or if it's US Soccer saying, you can't have this player anymore. Well, she's acted incorrectly.
I did see, I can't remember who tweeted it, but there was a copy of the hand-delivered notification that Hope Solo got about the suspension, the termination of her contract. And it says, it's Dan Flynn, he's the CEO, and I think general executive, I may have started wrong, but he's very powerful at US Soccer. He and Jill Ellis had the meeting with Hope Solo where they informed her this was happening. So it seems, at least on that front, a joint Jill Ellis and Dan Flynn representing US Soccer decision. Shall we talk about what happens next?
Sure.
Because she's only technically suspended until February 2017. Do you think there's a chance she is then recalled for, say, March would be either the She Believes Cup or the Algarve Cup? I'm not sure which one US Soccer will be competing in. Or is she out?
I think she's probably out, would be my guess.
It definitely feels like that, right?
Yeah,
the harshness of the decision and the way it's been delivered feels like it's an attempt to really push.
Yeah, it does. It feels like it's an attempt to publicly separate and to say, we are taking this action, we are parting ways and giving other people opportunities.
Well, they haven't actually said that, right?
They've not. It's just how it feels.
I've just had an idea. Maybe this is US Soccer speaking Hope Solo's language, right? Because she is very blunt and very aggressive. That's what annoyed the Brazilian fans talking about Zika. Yeah. That's what annoyed Brenda Chastain and Brianna Scurry. Maybe their way of separating with Hope Solo is to speak her language and be super harsh about separating, instead of the thing where, we're going to gently ease you out of the team. I feel like she would not go quietly into the night.
Yeah, that's maybe true. But sorry, I'm going back to, the more I think about it, the more frustrated I get with U.S. Soccer about this, and maybe with the coaches as well, because I feel like U.S. Soccer kind of did this to themselves. They hyped up, how many caps, how many shutouts she's had, and if you look at the caps for Alyssa Nair and Ashlyn Harris, they're minimal. Hope Solo has so many more caps that at this point she has become, if you're doing the U.S. women's roster, she's number one. You know she's going to be there. You know she's going to be starting. And so when you have this player who's guaranteed of their spot, you know they're going to be there. Some of that is definitely performance, but some of that is also marketability. She's an attractive person who's an outspoken person who you can put in front of a camera and she'll say interesting things. I think that's benefited U.S. soccer at times, and they've taken advantage of it. And now that it's no longer beneficial to them, they're like, well, now we're taking action.
So is the thing where like we had to be nasty to win the World Cup, and then now we're champions, we want to have this image of being very wholesome.
Yes.
Right? So now it's almost like she no longer fits the court.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and so then you drop
like
her.
After the revolution, you get rid of the leaders.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how it feels. She's the victim of the coup, it seems. Yeah. So I think that they probably don't call her back unless they get rid of Jill Ellis, and then a new coach comes in, and then that's what the new coach always does is, like, we're bringing everybody back in, everybody's got an opportunity. But until then, I think she might be done.
What about the impact on the other players? Because it strikes me that even though she has been a key part of this World Cup winning team, and the team for the past 10 years or so, after her Sweden comments, calling Sweden cowardly, I noticed that Megan Rapinoe said, I don't agree with that. And Alex Morgan said something like, that's not how I would have expressed. You know what I mean? Everyone basically very politely and in a very middle-class way disagreed with her.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And, I mean, I'm sure it's definitely a disruptive thing to happen just because that locker room is so tightly knit. That said, yeah, I don't know the ins and outs. Locker rooms are always kind of weird, and there's always different cliques and different issues going on.
Yeah.
So it might well be that she was this leader and it's going to destroy the team. It might well be that she was a person that maybe people were a little bit frustrated by for being so outspoken, and they will be kind of okay with the decision.
I have a feeling, just based on the stuff that we see, that she was tolerated because she was so talented, right? And I don't think she quite fits in with that culture. And I'm seeing the expression of that in Rapinoe and Alex Morgan saying, no, I wouldn't have said that. And the fact that, from what I understand from the January 2015 story, the players were really mad at Hope Solo for that sort of drunken team bus driving incident, right? And they were kind of happy that she got the suspension and was taught a lesson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then was welcomed back and like, okay, you've learned your lesson, let's go win a World Cup. But there's always a clash there, I think, like a culture clash.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. And I think also that, like if you think about, like, Gigi Buffon, if Gigi Buffon had conceded the howler that Hope Solo did and let the ball roll between his
Against
legs.
Colombia?
Like, I feel like there would have been... It would have been a similar reaction, but you would have seen, like, Chiellini come up and, like, pat him on the back and pull him up. Or you would have seen Bonucci be like, hey, come on, like, you're better than that. Like,
are you saying that... We noted this at the time, right? That the players didn't go running over to her and console her. They were like... They really gave her distance. As if almost like they don't want to make Hope Solo angry or get too near her when she's upset.
Yeah, but it was also like you could
I'm
see...
not implying a violence thing there.
No.
I'm just saying that she has an explosive personality.
But you can see it. The one I remember is Becky Sauerbrunn. Like, she does that thing where she like half tries to chase it down, even though she's not going to be able to, and then she just like kind of like dead eye turned and walks away. And it's more of like, it's not just a we know you're better than that. We know you're the best goalkeeper in the world. It definitely felt like a can't say anything. All right, let's just go and restart. Like and just that like little moment, I felt like gave insight into maybe they as you said, like her because she's so good.
Yeah,
they
like
don't
her
necessarily
skills.
like her when she does interviews.
All right, here's the thing. Okay, so say she's not selected again, right? What does Hope Solo do next? What is her legacy? Because as I understand it, a lot of these US women's national team players, the mainstays like Hope Solo, Alex Morgan, Carly Lloyd, kind of their identity is I am a US national team player, right? That's what they're all about. So to suddenly go from having no more of that but still being a professional athlete, does she still play for Seattle Reign, for example?
Yes.
You think?
I think so.
I'm not sure that she'll play in the NWSL without the sort of carrot of US national team selection.
Yeah, I mean, because it depends on Seattle is home. Like, I can imagine she'd just want to stay there and be settled and get paid and continue to perform really, really well in NWSL.
Really? I think for Seattle she makes maybe like $50,000 a year, and I think maybe to her that's not that much money because she's got plenty other money.
But you still get the endorsements, and you still can do all of the sponsorship deals you need to do while you're in NWSL.
Do you, if you're no longer the starting US national team? I mean, we may have a Ryan Lochte situation where some of those endorsements will disappear.
It's a confusing situation because it depends on what the endorsements are based on.
Yeah.
Because you could, if you want to go from a different perspective and say, like, U.S. Soccer is suspending a player for being outspoken and for worrying about, like, her health and her potential family's health and for being really competitive, and now you're suspending her, like, I don't think that's that big of a deal. But if it's the, like, being on the like, stolen van while her husband's drunk and then domestic violence, then it's a different issue.
There's also the more logical thing where if I was Seiko Watches and I was doing a contract with Hope Solo to endorse my product, I would have in there that the endorsement is contingent upon you being a member of the US national team.
Yeah.
Right? It could be as simple as that. A lot of the contracts may be a stipulation is you have to be playing for a member of the US national team, or we don't want to just sponsor some random NWSL keeper.
But, like I could see, if you want to go with the Hope Solo's outspoken comments got her fired, couldn't you see a Twix commercial when, the thing where it's like the person's about to say something and so they put the Twix in their mouth to give them time to think about what they're saying? Couldn't you see that? It's like Hope Solo eats a Twix and then she...
I see a Snickers commercial.
Okay, that's a good one too.
Where Hope Solo is the replacement for Joe Pesci.
Yes. They're both kind of outspoken.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That she is the new one. She's the new person where you're too angry.
I thought you meant a person who's Joe Pesci, and then they eat a Snickers bar, and then they're Hope Solo.
No,
okay,
they're Hope Solo, and then they become their normal calm
I got you. Either way, candy bar. So I could see her getting endorsement deals if she stays in NWSL. I could see her getting big money if she moves elsewhere.
Yeah, I think not being in contention for the US national team possibly frees her up to go play somewhere else. Because obviously, if you want to be on the US national team, part of that is being based in the US. It makes it easier to get to camps. It means that you're in constant contact with, say, Jill Ellis. So if there's a contract on offer at like PSG or Lyon or in I forgot what it's called. Oh, the Women's Premier League in England. You know what I mean? There are opportunities elsewhere that she could now take up.
And I would also say, I would also say that there's also an element of like the spotlight, and maybe it's the opposite of why players come to MLS. Is like I can go there and make money and kind of be anonymous, whereas Frank Lampard is going to be well known in London. Like if you Google Hope Solo suspended, one of the first results you'll get is Us Weekly. Like I can't imagine a men's player, if they had this situation, being in Us Weekly. It wouldn't be reported there.
Right.
And I think that she is a kind of a tabloid fodder as well. And so maybe you go abroad to get away from that media spotlight as well.
Yeah, so somewhere less tabloid, where she's of lesser tabloid interest.
Yes.
Right? All right. So the other thing we have to talk about, it's almost, if we were true to what TSS normally does, we'd be talking about the future of the actual team that's going to play.
Right.
So if we take for granted that Hope Solo is probably not coming back. We take for granted that the World Cup is in 3 years, right? Women's World Cup 2019 in France. Between now and then, all you really have, I believe, is either Algarve Cup or She Believes Cup, which both happen in March, so that's interesting. I mean, if she's recalled, she could be recalled for March for one of those tournaments. But I said we're saying that's not happening. Who's next? Who replaces Hope Solo? And how much pressure is on the next US women's national team goalkeeper? Because I feel like one slip up and everyone's like, oh, those Sweden comments don't seem so bad now. You know?
Well, I mean, I agree and I disagree, because I do think that you started to see we had the conversations about, is Hope Solo as good as she was? But when you started seeing some of those mistakes and being a little bit too aggressive coming off of her line and making mistakes there, if she had a lights out tournament, maybe there is more pressure.
Yeah.
Because she made some mistakes there, I think it gives either, and the names we're talking about would be Alyssa Nye or Ashlyn Harris, a little bit of flexibility and a little bit more freedom to get used to that number one spot.
And they both have time to sort of still be at or close to their peak by the time the 2019 World Cup rolls around, right? So I can't say that I've seen a lot of Ashlyn Harris or Alyssa Nye play, right? So I can't claim to be an expert. I have done a lot of reading. My understanding is, like, if you're making this judgment, is that Ashlyn Harris makes the flashier saves. Like, I think she literally has more NWSL saves of the week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She makes the full stretch saves for Orlando Pride. Whereas Alyssa Nye, the analysis I've read, plays for Chicago Red Stars, also NWSL, is better sort of positionally and sensibly, so less flashy, but less prone to getting caught out of position.
Right. And I'll take the easy route and say I'm going to guess it's going to be Alyssa Nye, because she was the number 2 at the Olympics. And I think if you want to say that Jill Ellis has already said Hope Solo is number 1, Alyssa Nye is number 2, Ashlyn Harris is the replacement or number 3, if you could have had 3 goalkeepers there, I'd say maybe that pecking order stays, at least for the short-term future.
Okay. Other thing is, those were the 2 keepers when you pick a 23-person squad. There's now a gap for a new player to come along. So there's going to be a third goalkeeper whose name most people, probably including us, will not recognise, right? I did a quick look at
Polo. A suspiciously looking Hope Solo.
She's like fake glasses.
Yeah, exactly.
Portland Thorns have 2 keepers right now who could be in contention for that third spot. Adriana Franch and Michelle Betas. So Michelle Betas I had never heard of. She was the NWSL Goalkeeper of the Year in 2015. But 2016, the starting keeper is Adriana Franch.
I can't see how that in any way exacerbates the tension between Portland and Seattle if Hope Solo gets dropped and Portland's goalkeeper becomes the number 3 goalkeeper. Yeah, it should be good.
Anything else you want to say before we sort of close this up and prepare ourselves for the inevitable emails to contact@totalsoccershow.com?
Yeah, no, other than to say that I've said Alyssa Nair, but Ashlyn Harris is definitely worth following both on Twitter and Instagram. I especially loved when there was the girl, I think it was the girl wanted to wear a suit to prom and her high school wouldn't let her, and Ashlyn Harris's Twitter rant was something special. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so we're coming towards the end. I want to do a quick summary of what I feel like we've hit upon here, which is, was it harsh of US Soccer to do this in terms of suspending her and cancelling her contract? I'm going to say yes. Did Hope Solo deserve better treatment? Maybe. Maybe not, because some of the stuff she's done is not great, right? And her athletic achievements are, a World Cup and all kinds of shutouts and caps, but she has acted very poorly.
I think with everything it's tough because there's lots of yes, but maybe. Because I would say well, maybe
you don't have to have a firm answer, right? We're not sort of we're not a morning radio show where you have to take a side and be like, no, she's the greatest of all time. She deserves respect. She should have a monument. You know what I'm saying?
Well, she should have. No, no, but I mean that yes, she's this long-serving goalkeeper with this proud career with the U.S. national team. So maybe it makes sense to be look, we're going to part ways, but then maybe she's also the type of person who's not going to accept that and isn't going to go without a fight, and so then maybe it has to be this public.
And then the other thing is, this is all feeds in for me. This all feeds into the narrative of the next 3 years, which is that this team is rebuilding. Yep. Right. So now we're going to have no Hope Solo. Very likely, we're going to have a battle for that starting goalkeeper spot, and we're going to see this team being formed over the next 3 years, ready to go after the World Cup, and also knowing that you're maybe not the best team in the world, and you can't take that for granted anymore because you only made the quarterfinal of the Olympics. I think I've said this before. I know that's not a good thing, but for us as a show, it's a more interesting thing because there are more things to debate about where the team needs to improve and what it's doing, and we can debate who should be on the wings and who should start up front, and all of that stuff is kind of at least going to be an interesting conversation for the next few years.
Yeah, I just don't know how Mallory Pugh is going to handle another 4 years. She's just already looking so ancient at, 18? Yeah, no, I think she'll be just fine, and I think so with the U.S. women's national team. But you're absolutely right that was what was interesting coming into this Olympic cycle is you had Mallory Pugh, you had Crystal Dunn, you had the change at right back with Ellie Krieger and Kelly O'Hara. So those little wrinkles make them more a compelling team because you're trying to figure out why are they doing this, what do they offer, what's the difference here. And I think more new faces, more fresh faces create more opportunities, creates more interesting narratives going forward.
And then you've got to think about the future of the US women's team and that equal pay for equal play stuff, and how this affects their relationship with US soccer and how this all plays out. Right? I'm still hoping for a happy ending where everybody's happy, the US women's team gets more money, US soccer doesn't look awful. There's still a chance at redemption here.
There's going to be a serious shots fired moment if on January 1st of 2017 US soccer announces equal pay for the women's national team immediately after suspending and terminating Hope Solo's contract. It might definitely be a little bit of salt in the wound there.
And as for the goalkeeper battle, we'll know mid-September when the US plays against Thailand and the Netherlands. All right, Taylor, thank you for doing this emergency podcast with me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
We will be doing our Bundesliga show as promised. It'll be out very late Thursday night, so you can catch it Thursday night. You'll definitely be able to get it Friday morning. We'll also include our what to watch this weekend. Until then, it is goodbye from us.